new is going to become so big, especially people like Naval Ravikant from the US believe there's going to be a creator in every home in about 5 years' time. And NFTs could be the game changer that we all have to learn about. I mean, this session covered so many things around NFTs. I couldn't be more excited being part of the creator economy ecosystem myself. I think Ty has done a tremendous job putting this panel together, and thank you so much, Ravindra, Brendan, and Ram. This was a fantastic session. Now, I would like to get into the next session, which seems to be an exciting lineup again. We have a powered session on people and profit. Special thanks to Trica. We have Siddhartha Sharma, head of Trica Equity, in this session, and I'm going to be inviting people one by one. Um, Siddharth is going to be the chair, and like I said, Siddharth has over a decade of cross industry experience leading sales and business for SaaS, BFSI, and IT companies. Creating value for customers is core for him. Trica is a unified technology solution for equity management and transactions. Welcome, Siddharth. I will be calling you on stage just in a bit to take over. Then we have Aastha Almast, co-founder of the new shop. Aastha, before joining the new shop, has worked with companies like Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, S&P Capital, IQ, and others. Welcome, Aastha. Ashish Kumar Singh, who is the Chief Human Resources Officer for Meesho. He leads Meesho's HR team. He comes with the experience of working in various HR capacities. Ashish has worked with brands such as Myntra, MedLife, Adobe, Hindustan, Unilever, and Reckitt Benckiser. Welcome, Ashish. The next speaker is Ankit Prasad, founder and CEO of Bobble.ai, a small town boy from the little known city of Chaibasa, Jharkhand, who made to Forbes 30 under 30 Asia list and many other lists as an emerging star of Asia's startup ecosystem for building world's first conversation media platform, Bobble AI. Welcome, Ankit. The next speaker is Shyam Sundar Singh, co-founder of DeHaat. As a co-founder of DeHaat, responsible for growth and strategy, Shyam takes care of the development and implementation of company strategies. And we have Srikanth Iyer with us, co-founder and CEO of HomeLane. With over 28 years of experience as an entrepreneur and a passion for new business ideas, Srikanth is a 4X entrepreneur. Prior to starting HomeLane, Srikanth was also the co-founder of Edurite Technologies, a leading e-content provider in the education space, which he led to acquisition by Pearson in one of the largest acquisitions in the Indian education space, worth $200 million. He then went on to become the CEO of Pearson India. Welcome, Srikanth. So I would like to welcome the speakers on stage. And just before I give the dice to them, I would like to thank the sponsors for this session who are Trica. We thank them for their support and a big shout out to Kalari Capital, Ivy Cap Ventures, Deloitte, and Dell for their continued support. Also would like to mention about the TiEcon coins. It's raining coins at TiEcon Delhi 2022. You can earn and collect these coins as you engage on the event platform on 24th and 25th March. And these points can be redeemed for a variety of networking and mentorship opportunities. So I'll hand over the dice to Siddharth to take over. Thank you so much. Welcome.
Thank you, Kinner, for the warm introduction. Hello and very warm welcome, everybody, to our session on the topic of people and profit being conducted by Trica Equity. I am Siddharth and I represent Trica Equity, which is a cap table and ESOP management solution from Let's Venture. We believe that ESOP and cap table management could become quite complex and daunting for companies, especially growth stage companies, as they go through various rounds of funding and they offer ESOPs to more and more people. Trica Equity offers a unified solution for companies to manage, both their cap tables as well as ESOPs, and thereby reducing manual errors and improving compliances. Please do check us out at www.trica.co. So during our session today, we will cover a lot of ground on everything around ESOPs. We'll focus on four major themes: team building with equity sharing, talent acquisition and rewards, trends in ESOPs, and finally a practical guide to compensation and rewards. This will hopefully give the founders who are joining us today a lot of insights into how founders of successful startups have leveraged ESOP as a tool to attract and retain talent, essentially building and scaling their teams. We have structured our session in four parts. We'll start with a panel discussion with our esteemed panel of founders that you see on the screen right now. This will be followed by a Q&A session, and I will encourage all the attendees to put in their questions during the session in the Q&A box of the screen right in front of you. We will take as many questions as we can during the Q&A session after the panel discussion is over. This would be followed by a session on compensation and rewards, a practical guide by Ashish Kumar Singh, who is the CHRO of Meesho, which will then be followed by a Q&A to Ashish on the content he would have just presented. So, in order to kick off the session, I am joined by four founders of some of the leading companies in their respective industry spaces: Srikanth, Ankit, Shyam, and Aastha. A very warm welcome to you, and thank you for joining us today. And thank you for sharing your insights and learnings that you have gathered along the way while building and scaling your respective businesses. So while we are through with the introductions, Shrikant, being a four times entrepreneur, I wanted to start with you. I realize that you have built and scaled multiple teams across different ventures. So it would be appropriate for me to start with you and giving from your wealth of and knowledge. So we understand that the startup ecosystem is more than a decade old now, but we have never seen so much, activity around ESOPs as we have seen in the past couple of years or so, right? What, according to you, has been the reason for, a change in the mindset of the industry? Is it because employees are more accepting of ESOPs as an instrument, or is it because of the great resignation phenomenon that we are seeing right now, that the founders are more generous with their ESOP policies right now? What has changed?
So, yeah, thanks. First of all, thanks for having me here. Great to be here and, with my co-panelists. Very, very privileged. Um, I think that there's one single big reason for ESOPs to actually gain more and more importance, especially in the last couple of years. And I think it's only going to accelerate going forward. And for that, the reason I believe is exits. And as we all know, we've seen more exits happening in the industry, in the startup industry over the last 3 years than we have ever seen in the last previous 7 years, maybe. And it's gone exponentially up. That's when people, employees, founders, and investors have started taking ESOP a lot more seriously. And that's how we've actually been able to use it as a way of not only hiring but also retaining talent in the company. So, if you, my opinion is that that is the single largest reason exits, because finally it is about show me the money, right? So, and if that eventually is happening, then obviously all the stakeholders will get benefited. Definitely employees also. So I think that has happened in multiple ways. Because exits are happening at the end stage, also we are seeing investors don't mind giving ESOP buyback schemes, or even secondary exits even during the stage. They all feel that it may be actually a better way of them to kind of either expand the ESOP pool or clean it up. And But the main reason again is because exits are happening, this behavior is actually happening. So that's what I think.
Yeah, and as they say, proof lies in the pudding, right? And this is probably the single biggest motivator for people to also accept ESOPs as a reward tool. Thanks for that, Shrikant. Bringing you in, Ankit, you founded Bobble in 2015, and I believe that you have gone through multiple rounds of funding, right? And I wanted to ask you a question that is probably on the minds of most early stage, startup founders. What, according to you, is the best stage to for a company to start thinking of ESOPs? Is it as early as possible, maybe at the time of raising seed or angel funding, or should you typically start thinking about them during the first institutional round of funding?
I think the best time was yesterday. So, so if you haven't thought about it yet, then you should do it ASAP because, like Srikanth mentioned, because of this sudden rise in exits and the liquidity events, people have got a taste of it already, right? So, if you want to attract the best talent out there, who is already, working at a cushy, nice, sustainable, risk-free sort of, that's what it is considered, corporate job, then you would have to show them the disproportionate wealth creation opportunity, right? And that disproportionate wealth creation would happen from ESOP. Now, if I start the ESOP at a very early stage in my startup, then I'm able to offer 100x or 500x growth in that value, right? But if I happen to offer it after I've already become a unicorn, then probably I can offer 10x, 15x sort of value creation in next 3 to 5 years or so. I don't know. I mean, it depends on case to case, but yeah, that's what the ballpark figures might look like. So having and for those reasons, I believe for every entrepreneur, since talent is one of the key aspect of growing the business, in order to attract talent, ESOP is a very critical tool, especially for leadership talent, and they would feel motivated to find themselves not just a regular employee, but an owner of the company by owning the shareholding of the company. That responsibility, accountability can also be, um, induced into the behaviors by bringing ESOP. So yeah, the best time was yesterday.
Okay, so I think this is really valuable advice to early stage founders, at least that start as soon as possible. If you have not, start now. Thanks, Ankit. Coming to you, Astha. So you are on a path that very few, startup founders have taken. You are building an offline business, right? So while the value of ESOPs in attracting talent and building teams in the tech space is largely established right now, what approach have you taken? And is it aligned with your overall, employee acquisition and employee retention objectives at the new shop?
Of course, I want to make a correction there. So it's not offline, it's omni-channel retail.
Okay.
So we have, it's interesting because what we realized building this company is that, the passion to create something new and the freedom to create something new has attracted talent to our company because we're building in a space that has traditionally not existed before in India. So that's what gets talent attracted, that we'll get the freedom and the passion to do something on our own and rise faster in the hierarchy of ranks than they would in a traditional other setup. That's what has helped us attract a lot of talent. And what really retains talent and ensures that they're constantly motivated to enhance productivity is some kind of form of ownership. So while the so currently I have about like 450 employees, and the 50 guys are the ho staff, and mostly white collar. They understand ESOPs for all the reasons Srikanth spoke of. But the large army of the blue collar folks working at the store level, usually retailers are troubled by high attrition rates and very high problems around integrity, so pilferage rates. And today, standing here, I have the lowest attrition rates in the retail industry and the best pilferage rates in the retail industry. And that's because we've created a path of ownership for even the store staff. So every store manager who's inducted in the company has a clear path of ownership towards a store. So they can tomorrow become store owners. And that freedom to work in an environment where there's unlimited growth potential, along with ownership part to owning a store, has ensured that we get these amazing low attrition and very low pilferage rates in the industry. So that's what gets people motivated.
Right. Thanks, Asta. And Shyam, while we spoke about a channel, a business, right, that Astha just described about, I believe that DeHaat has a significantly large presence in the rural markets and also a very large offline presence. Has this influenced your philosophy of granting ESOPs to your employees, and how is it, different from what you would have seen in other companies, if it is?
So, hey, hi everyone. For us, figuring out that what sort of ESOP strategy should work, right, was primarily figuring out how do we want to retain people over a very long term. And considering that agri is a space which demands patience, which demands long-term stay and long-term strategy, right? This had been our core focus of overall how we look at people. Right? So ESOPs also we have looked at from that perspective. I think what had been the easier part was to convince people on ESOP, right, and make them excited about ESOP, because somewhere that sense of ownership with doing something like this in agri space is something which binds everyone at that. And here, I'm not just talking about people who have come from this startup ecosystem where they are familiar with ESOPs, right? But we are also talking about young agri graduates or people who have spent significant amount of time in say traditional companies, right? Uh, in agri input or in agri output in traditional agricultural companies, right? So creating that sort of attraction to people was something which what had been a relatively easier part. And I think hence we have so very recently, and to your earlier point also, that we should have rolled it out much earlier, but now very recently we have rolled out an offer where everyone in this organization is eligible for ESOP, primarily based on their duration of stay, their growth, their performance, and they will be eligible for ESOPs from time and again in a stable manner, right? Which ensures that there is a path towards long-term wealth creation, right? That's what we are looking at from our ESOP policy. And in this context, in the rural ecosystem, I think that is something that we have done that, okay, that's something which is bringing people towards us, right? And helping us to retain them over a longer period of time.
All right. So inclusiveness and wealth creation for every employee is the key, objective of
Yeah.
your ESOP policy. All right. Thanks, Shyam. So coming back to you, Srikanth, while we did speak about the acceptance of ESOPs by employees now, uh, let's talk about, awareness about ESOP and how they work, the various nuances. Taxation aspect is one that most people are not very, familiar of. So, you have built multiple businesses. What, according to you, has changed? Do employees today fully comprehend, ESOPs and their nuances, or there is still a lot of work to be done? And what are organizations doing to change that, for their employees?
I would put employees whom we hire into two boxes and they behave little differently. If they are hiring from the startup ecosystem, they understand ESOPs very well. We don't need to educate them too much. In fact, they come back with nuances and tell us which we didn't know about sometimes. There would be one more box where employees who are not from the startup ecosystem who come in. Who may not be aware as much. So what we do is that as part of their onboarding itself, even if they have ESOP as part of their compensation package, we go through the pluses and minuses of having ESOPs. I mean, there are not too many minuses, but for whatever reason, we have to tell them as is, right? I mean, if they choose to exercise earlier, then there's a tax implication and so on and so forth. All the pluses and minuses are explained to them because some of them may not know, especially this vesting period, 1 year bullet. I mean, there are a lot of new jargon that they suddenly hear. But I have noticed that mostly from people who we hire from the non-startup buckets. which is not thankfully the majority. The majority is from startup buckets. But irrespective of that, we get them through a program where we educate them on each of these. We also educate them on the fact that we keep giving ESOPs. This is not like you're given one allotment when you join and that's it. I mean, matlab, jab tak tum rahoge, yahi hai types. No, that's not the thing. And tell them also that they will keep getting opportunities as long as they keep contributing and making a positive impact. So I would really say, but it's very important nowadays because it's become a very large component. Obviously, like I keep saying, the more risk, the more reward that you can get. Some of them ask for less fixed and more. I'm seeing that now they ask for less fixed component and more of options sometimes, which is nice to see, by the way. Frankly, as a founder, unless I'm going to raise one more round and I don't want to give it to them at a lower price. But yeah, it's good to see.
All right. Thanks, Srikanth. And Ankit, coming back to you, so since you have gone through, various stages of the startup, as a company becomes mature, how do you think the ESOP philosophy of a company changes? Let's say you start your ESOP policy during seed stage, and then you go on to raise multiple rounds of funding. How does the ESOP philosophy of a company change? And if you could also share maybe some insights around what employee-friendly, policy may look like.
Sure, Siddharth. So first of all, I would like to touch upon the awareness part itself quickly. The
Sure.
way we do it at Bobble is at two fixed instances. One of the instances, during the during the advanced stages of the interviewing process, when we are discussing about compensation, we make the person fully aware about the ESOPs and our policy of ESOP at our organization, which helps us in negotiating and creating a balance between immediate gain in the form of gross as well as long-term gain in the form of ESOPs, right? It creates a fine balance. And then secondly, at the time of annual performance review, which is this, the ongoing month or the quarter, wherein when we have to again have this necessary but tough conversations around compensation, it is very important to again create a fine balance between the immediate gain gross component and the long-term gain of ESOP, right? So these are the two fixed instances where we necessarily make people aware and educate about ESOPs. And then there are, of course, other events, be it our all hands meet or our different workshops that we conduct around different policies. So all of those are additional ad hoc events that we keep doing. Right. Coming to your next question of how does ESOP evolve along with the evolution of the startup itself? When we were 10-member, 20-member team for us, and we had very limited set amount of resources, it was very important for us to find people who are with us for long term. And it was also important for us to save or be prudent on our cash expenses, right? For those reasons, we were more generous on the ESOP policy. And we were finding people who could appreciate the generousness of those ESOP policies, right? For example, the strike price could be at the face value, right? Or exercise price could be at the face value, or the vesting schedule could be lesser than 5 years. It could be 4 years, 3 years even, right? Or for that matter, there could be additional top-ups every year done on top of the already given ESOPs. But as and when company grows, especially when the company approaches towards IPO, the profit and loss becomes important metrics, right? And ESOP calculation does impact P&L of the companies. Many people must be aware of it, right? And therefore, the exercise price also becomes important, right? Giving ESOP at exercise price or face value might not be a good idea when the company is approaching towards public market. because it would impact the P&L sheets really badly because of the quantum of the ESOP and the valuations at which the company is operating at that moment. Right. Therefore, people typically adopt some percentage discount on the existing ESOP price, right? And the other thought process around it that I have heard is to align, people who have joined the organization late in the journey towards the further organization goals by keeping them at par with the current valuation, right? So
Yeah.
instead of offering the ESOP at a face value, late stage startups prefer to offer ESOP at a discounted value to the fair market value, simply because it helps in keeping the system fair. That people who came early got it at a lower valuation, people who came late got it at a later valuation, but still there is enough scope for growth, and the alignment happens. From the perspective of, today we stand at X valuation, we have to reach, let's say, 10x valuation, then how do we, so we are in a way sharing the portion of the achievement or the journey from X to 10x, right? Instead of also giving them the value creation that happened before the joining. Right? So this is a point that the founders might want to note, that the exercise price to that employee individually, the exercise price would not matter, because in India we don't exercise the ESOPs, right? We keep it under the vested condition until the liquidity event comes. So in a manner, the exercise price is not really impacting the employee from that sense of, paying from the pocket. They're not paying from the pocket, rather getting the value of the company from at the time when they joined in at X valuation till the time when they're taking liquidity, which is at, let's say, 5x valuation.
All
So
right.
this is
Thanks.
one of the factors that I've seen evolving. There are a few other factors. For example, the flexibility to create exceptions. In the early stage, we typically keep everything standardized, but at the late stage, because of the various complexities and hierarchies and different kinds of people coming from different backgrounds, sometimes we have to create exceptions. So the policy or the plan should allow the some exceptions at the founder level, and the greater exceptions at the board level, right? So these exceptions are also built into the plan when the company evolves.
Okay. Thanks, Ankit. So, being cognizant of the time, I think we are already around 28-minute mark. So, quickly to you, Astha. So, you have taken a unique approach towards, rewarding employees, right? By evoking a sense of ownership by giving them store ownership, right? What are some of the principles that you kept in mind while doing so in terms of coverage, in terms of vesting and exercise?
So, typically, when a store manager is inducted in the store, they have been taught that this is your store, and tomorrow you can own it. So, most of our stores are actually franchised out stores. And once the store manager has reached a certain level of a cluster, so above a store manager is a cluster manager who manages about 15 stores. So, once they've progressed to the level of a cluster manager, our franchise fee is very little, and it's also subsidized for employees. It's actually deducted as part of their salary. And hence, the clear path to ownership within a year and a half is what is presented to the store manager. So that's how we've structured it.
All right. And Shyam, just one quick, hopefully response from you around, what are the key things that a startup founder should keep in mind? Any do's and don'ts that you would like to share with the larger startup community when they are about to draft their ESOP, policy?
I think they should definitely keep in mind that what's the objective of the ESOP policy, right? And accordingly design that. I think, as Ankit was saying, ESOP policy also evolves over time, right? So at different time, you need to have different principles on which you will be able to draft your policy, and that completely depends on what sort of talent pool that you are trying to attract, how you would want to retain people. I think the biggest, I would say, don'ts are, right, the policy should be very clear in communication, right? What we have seen is that people who are coming from, a startup ecosystem, they of course know various elements of the policy, and they can definitely ask right sort of questions at the right time. But those who are not very familiar with all the technicalities, right, they should not be surprised at various points, because ESOP is for longer period of time, and there are various events which happen over 4, 5, 6, 10 years of time members, right? So the communication should be very clear, should be very transparent, right? And at the end of it, it should be employee friendly. The ultimate aim at all times remains on the wealth creation sides, right? So it has to be employee friendly, as well as it has to be in tune with organization strategy. So both needs to be balanced.
All right. Thanks, Shyam. We have one question from Gaurav, which says, "What is the adaptability and future of co-founders on sweat equity in India?" Uh, uh, Srikanth, would you like to take this question? What is the
Sorry, can you just
adaptability
repeat that? What's the adaptability of?
and future of co-founders on sweat equity in India?
I mean, typically, if you have been there as a co-founder, as the old-fashioned definition of it, which is from the start of the company, then you would automatically have, I'm assuming, some sweat equity. I mean, otherwise, if you have also invested, that's great. But you should definitely have some sweat equity as far as being a co-founder is concerned. Um, the one thing that I would say is that I would advise co-founders would be, please define your roles very, very sharply and clearly. Because one thing that I've seen is, while everyone has to help out in the initial stages, without having any definition, also, kind of plays its tricks, not only operationally, but also in terms of ESOP and in terms of sweat equity allocation. I think it needs to be clearly defined as who's responsible for what, and needs to be very, very objectively done. Uh, I just wanted to actually add one point to what Shyam said. I'm sorry, I'm going back on this one, but the list of don'ts. I have one big list, one don't do, which is don't play God when you are giving ESOP. Sometimes we tend to do that, and that comes and bites you. It will bite you. Now, if not in the future, in the next immediate future, it will bite you in the late in some time. So don't ever try and do that. It doesn't have any good endings.
And since there was a reference to exits, right, and buybacks, I just have one last question, maybe to Ankit. And I need a 30-second answer, Ankit. I'm sorry for for this,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I believe that you have done a few buybacks, right, or liquidity events at Bobble. Uh, do you have any inputs to share with your fellow co-founders on what is the right time for somebody to look at buybacks? Is it at a certain stage in your fundraise journey, or any other metric that you would track to do that?
Yeah, I think every time there is a new financing round happening in the company, it is important for founders to also take care of the liquidity of employees. It helps in building the trust and creating the level of ultimate awareness when people see cash in their hands, right? And therefore, founders can negotiate with the incoming investors to put in certain amount on the liquidity, ESOP liquidity side, while the majority of the amount comes to the company as a primary funding amount, right? Even after the financing round, there are certain investors which feel left behind, right, who could not participate in that financing round. I think there's a merit for the founder to go and talk to those investors and try bringing into the cap table via the secondary liquidity rounds, right, which could be an immediate round after the primary financing round. There will be ample opportunities in the startup journey to create liquidity for employees. It's just a matter of willingness and intent that the founders need to show. Right, there is one small point that I typically exercise in Bobble is whenever we do a strategic partnership with a firm, and we build a relationship for long term. In order to strengthen that relationship, I openly, without shying away, offer them shares in our company via creating ESOP liquidity. Right, that helps me two ways. A, I'm able to create that strategic bonding with that company or the HNI, and at the same time, we are able to provide liquidity to the employees at regular intervals. Right? That helps.
All right. Thank you so much, Ankit. Thank you, Astha, Ankit, Shyam, and Srikanth for sharing your insights and learnings, and thank you for being candid in your responses. Really appreciate you being here. So, yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Bhargav.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you so much, Siddharth. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
So I would like to now invite Mr. Ashish Kumar Singh, who is the CHRO of Meesho, which is one of the largest and the most recognized startups in the social commerce space in India. It is also probably the fastest to become a unicorn in this space. And Meesho has been in the news very recently because of its unique and maybe industry first, ESOP structure. And Ashish is here to share some of his learnings and his thoughts around how, startups can structure their compensation and reward programs. With this, Ashish, over to you, and apologies for the delay.
No problems. Thank you, Siddharth. And hi, everyone. Hope you're doing great. This is Ashish. I'm from Meesho. Let me present the deck that I have for you. It's a brief deck. Siddharth, let me know if this is visible. Is this visible?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Right. So I'm here to talk a little bit about ESOPs from a design perspective, from an HR practitioner's perspective, from whatever I have seen, in my limited working with some of the startups lately. So I think I was hearing the past panel discussion. Some of these points were also discussed there, but overall, here's the way I have seen the overall rewards sort of or the pay positioning change in the journey of a startup from a very early stage to gradually a growth stage and then to a maturity stage. What you would find is that in early stage, I think Ankit was talking about this, there is higher stocks as a percentage of the company value, right, which is offered, and lower cash. And gradually, as the company grows to the growth and maturity stages, the cash part becomes more and more balanced, more and more higher. Initially, the leverage is very high on ESOPs. What I've also seen that initially, in the early stage, the proportion of joining grant versus, say, the annual grants, performance grants or promotion grants, etc., those kind of things start happening a little bit later. Initially, the proportion of the joining grant is significantly higher. And later, I think the performance differentiation kicks in, and therefore annual grants, etc., tend to become higher. Overall, generally, from a rewards perspective, in principle, the early stage organizations, you'll find lesser differentiation in all forms. You will find lesser occurrence of variable pay or performance based cash. And gradually, as the organization evolves, you'll find higher and higher dependence on differentiation of performance and rewards linked to that. So that's sort of just the a high level how the evolution of pay happens from an early stage to a late stage in an organization. Talking a little bit specifically about ESOPs and how the design and some of the design considerations on this. I think first of all, just as we are designing it early in the organization, it's important to just keep it simple and flexible. I've seen a lot of ESOP policies of early stage companies designed in a very, very strict way. And later, as the organization evolves and there are needs to make exceptions, make changes, either in terms of front loading or back loading of ESOPs, or eligibility or acceleration of vesting, different types of vesting schedules, right? 2-year, 3-year, 4-year, etc. Then for each of them, I found that it becomes more and more difficult. You got to take it back and forth again to the board and then take approvals and come back. So my advice will be the overall policy should be designed very flexible early stage. Keep all types of flexibility in it. What you communicate initially to employees may still be very simple and clear, but the Uber policy should be pretty flexible. That's one of the key points that one of the learnings that I have had over the past few years. Secondly, from a design perspective, obviously, it's important to align with the founder's philosophy, as well as with the people philosophy, the HR philosophy in the organization. Initially itself, it's one of my learnings that it's important to create pool sizes, even if it is projected, even if it is approximate. You can calculate it basis, your broad hiring plan, percentage people getting promoted, etc. But make a certain pool size, get a certain, early approval, create a sort of a governance early up in terms of reporting to the board, etc. This helps as in later stages the company matures and higher ESOP is needed to attract and retain talent. Finally, one of the very critical aspects that I've seen is just how we communicate about ESOPs. So many organizations I've seen, they add just this 1 line or 2 line on the offer letter, which is about ESOPs. And I've realized if we don't pay enough importance to it, candidates will not pay enough importance. My suggestion would be make a detailed 1-pager, the way we do for our cash offer, right? Talk about the past, how your value has increased in the past, something about future potential. At least at senior levels, talk about next funding, any visibility of next dilution, etc. Even if these are approximate, you can call those out. And secondly, I think even for internal employees, it's important to think of rewards in both terms. So often our annual letters just carry the cash component, this much percentage increase. It just sort of then shows to the employee how important ESOP is for them. As opposed to that, if I show both cash and the ESOPs, including the ESOPs that will vest over the next 1 year to the employee knows how much am I leaving on the table if I'm exiting this company today, right? So yeah, some of the initial design considerations and how we could enable those in the company. Obviously, the type of grants, are the following. At the joining grant, my recommendation strongly will be, please do not follow percentage of cash salary as the ESOP grant. It is so unfair. A person who negotiates for higher cash also gets higher ESOPs. Therefore, build ranges and use it judiciously. On a promotion grant, typically on the ranges, I've seen multiple type of options here, but one of the common ones I've seen is people bring to the min of the next range in terms of the ESOP vesting. ESOP unvested value when somebody is getting promoted. Performance grant, typically you'll do this for your 20 to 30% talent and give them ESOP every year, such that eventually you'll find the top 10%, top 15% of your talent getting ESOP every year, and that's your lock-in, and retain the individual for a longer term. Similarly, one of the other things I've seen is there are some organizations who customize the performance grant very nicely, the annual grants very nicely for senior talent. In particular, what they do is they sort of think of a 9-box matrix, right, which you do potential performance, right? A similar matrix should be made for, say, how the individual values cash versus stocks, and place the individual on it, right? Not everybody values cash equally or stocks equally, and basis that, at least for senior people, you'll be able to identify the list of people whose reward should be more stocks heavy versus cash heavy. This especially becomes important from mid to later stages in a company. Finally, the purchase program. This is one of the options. I think recently we tried this at Meesho. I'll talk a little bit more about this, but this is an option where an employee from his or her salary can set aside some money to purchase ESOPs of the company, and then you can design aspects around it. This is a very strong lever for encouraging ownership. A sense of ownership in employees also leads to a very strong retention as far as talent is concerned. This is one of those programs. Don't worry about the slide. I'll walk you through what the key part is. Here, what happens is somebody would set aside, say, a certain amount of money from the salary. That total amount worth of ESOPs is granted to the individual right away. Remember, it's granted. Once it's granted, this one will vest fully within 1 year. Okay. However, over the next few months, the deduction from the salary will happen. So what happens is twofold. One, because my CTC reduces, the individual is able to save tax on it, first of all. Two, during this, especially in a growth stage where employees very strongly feel for the company, it evokes a lot of sense of ownership for the organization, where people buy those stocks, they know it will grow in value. And, and the deductions still happen in the future, but the grant happens right away, right? There is another element, for example, especially at Meesho, that we've added, is that if you say have opted for $100 of deduction from your salary, depending on your tenure, you may get 1.2 or 1.5 or 2x of that as ESOPs. So there's a bit of a tenure element also added there, so that people who have been with us for longer are the ones who are able to gain higher, from the ESOP calculations. So yeah, ballpark, those are the key advantages. You're able to get the entire vesting within 1 year. You're able to save taxes, as well as you're able to get more than the deduction that you gave because of the tenure factor, right? So all of those advantages of this particular program. So yeah, I think those were the key things that I had. With this, I'll pause here. In the interest of time, I know we got to wrap up at 2:45, so I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Ashish. Let me see if we have any questions so far. All right. We don't have any questions so far, but I think let's give it a couple of minutes. But in the meantime, I have a question. So while you did allude to ensuring transparency, right? You also spoke about creating not just a two-liner reference to your ESOP policy, but a more detailed page about how ESOPs would work for an employee. What are the other things a startup can do to ensure transparency among the larger employee base and the policy?
I think multiple things. Back in maybe 4 or 5 years back, there was an absence of a lot of tools which could help us with these kind of administration of ESOPs. Luckily for us now, a host of them are available. I think it's very, very important to have one of those tools. They're very creative. It makes it very easy for people to see the value, what's vested, what's unvested, the FMV at real time. It also makes it very easy for an individual to run ESOP purchase programs, etc. from a communication perspective also, and I think I heard this in the previous panel as well, important to nothing creates credibility for ESOP than a liquidation event. If people are able to see hard cash, that's a communication that we can do. So if you're able to get that in early, that helps create a lot of credibility for the ESOP program as well.
This question did come up during the panel discussion. I thought I'll run it past you as well. So we did speak with Ankit about when is the right time for a startup to consider liquidity program, right? Can you also share your thoughts around how frequently a company should conduct these buyback programs and what are the key parameters a company should keep in mind while identifying the eligibility of people who would be participating in these buyback or liquidity events?
Yeah, so these days, especially in the kind of organizations and the talent pool that I come from, I have seen liquidity programs are very, very frequent. I know of organizations who have announced this almost every year. By the way, Meesho is one which in the past has done one liquidity event every single year. There are companies who have also, I know, committed to doing one in the future for the next couple of years. So, in my mind, I think definitely at the time of at the time when we are raising a fund, it's important to have have that discussion, have that negotiation, and make sure that there is some portion of it that goes to the employees. In my view, the more frequently we can do, the better, especially at the stage when we are ramping up fast on talent, particularly that you are hiring is on tech and product. Tech and product talent in especially values this a lot, as far as I've seen. While it is, I mean, it is valued by quite a few others as well, but especially there, it is very, very aggressive. So I would say as frequently as possible, if you are able to do it, at least during fundraisers, maybe not very early stage, but at a slightly later stages onwards.
Okay. And any thoughts around, the most frequently asked question around, ESOPs from early stage founders is how large an ESOP pool should be at the beginning of a startup journey and how it should progress over time. Any thoughts around that?
Oh yeah, so this answer will change a lot depending on the stage where you are and depending on also the nature of the sector that you are in. Just my experience of it from a very early stage, I think I've seen, because the overall value is lower, I've seen it starting from even 20-25% to gradually settling at a slightly mid-large company stage to 8, 10, 11% as well as the overall ESOP pool. But yeah, this answer I know will vary a lot depending on which company you talk to.
All right. I think there is one pending question. I'm not sure whether this is relevant for this discussion. So the question is, should the employees look for a clause on buyback of ESOPs by the company in absence of a liquidity event within 5 years?
No, I get that question. Can you say that again?
Should the employees look for a clause on buyback of ESOPs by the company in absence of a liquidity event within 5 years? So essentially, I think the question is around whether these liquidity events should be clearly documented in the ESOP policy that a company is rolling out.
Yeah, I'm afraid I don't think you will be able to document or predict this for the future. What you can do for sure is talk about how often you have done it in the past. You can also potentially even write that, hey, if a next fundraise happen, we will make an effort to do this again. But that's where you got to limit it. I don't think you'll be able to commit a time and date of the next liquidation round.
Okay. And From you did mention that when you are offering ESOPs to an employee, it should not be looked at as a percentage of their salary, but you should be a little more either creative or appreciative of the employees motivations, right? What do you think in the various different stages of a startup journey this changes? That in the beginning maybe companies offer a percentage of their ESOP pool to employees, and then maybe the philosophy keeps on changing.
Okay. What I meant was the following. I know at senior levels, instead of giving an ESOP as units, there are sometimes percentages offered. I think those are very senior levels and very, very few in the company. What I meant was I've also seen a lot of companies give ESOPs as, for example, 100% or 50% of your fixed salary. So whatever is your fixed salary, you get 50% more of that as ESOPs. In my view, I think giving this as a percentage of fixed salary is pretty unfair. It's better for us to build ranges for different types of roles, the way we build ranges of cash salary for different levels in jobs. What it does, therefore, is to make a judicious call by our recruiting team to see how much value does the individual place on ESOPs and within the range, and make that offer. Making it as a percentage of fixed salary implies that if I negotiate higher cash, then I'm able to get higher stocks as well.
Okay. So I think we have a little over 3.5 minutes to go. So any specific don'ts that you would like to call out that companies should not include in their ESOP policies? While you did speak about do's, anything in particular about don'ts as well?
Yeah, talking about just from a ESOP policy perspective, the part that I would definitely like to talk about is the fact that I've seen a lot of policies who are very, very clearly designed at a very early stage. It's almost the vesting schedule, to weather acceleration. All the design aspects are very, very clearly designed, clearly communicated. The problem is that is something that I would say not to do. The reason being that as the organization evolves, the requirements of an organization increases. There are situations where one may have to uh, change vesting schedules. You may have to take down rounds. You may have to take acquisitions. A host of things could happen in the future. Best to keep the policy level flexible, so that you don't have to keep going back and forth to the board for approvals and delays, and you're able to run the program efficiently, including the fact that I've seen that there are places where at the exercise price and is so tightly defined at the very beginning, that also leads to similar problems later when you got to make any exceptions for employees. So my advice will be, keep it very, very flexible early stage. The Uber policy, what you communicate to employees is different, that you can choose to define at different stages of your evolution.
All right. Thanks, Ashish. I think there is just one more question around online resources that cover tools like Trica. So, Shubham, we can send you a couple of helpful links your way. There are also some blogs that Trica Equity has written, and you would find those links in the chat section of the screen in front of you. And Ashish, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights. I'm sure these are not just relevant for early stage companies who are just about to start, drafting their ESOP policies, but also for companies who have had their ESOP policies for a while now. This would maybe force them to rethink, their approach to ESOPs for their employees.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Siddharth, and it was a pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
Same here. Thanks, Ashish.